Warm welcome to amazing new podcasts and YouTube channels. Thank you to the audience for being here for the past 3 years, for watching, sharing, and subscribing. So this is the channel where stories of resilience, triumph, and unwavering hope come to life. And in each episode, we dive into the inspiring journey of individuals who have faced the toughest challenges heads-on and emerged victorious. And our aim is to be a beacon of hope and inspiration, offering a guiding light to those navigating through difficult times. And whether you are dealing with health challenges, professional setbacks, or personal struggles, this channel is dedicated to uplifting your spirit and showing you that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to hope and triumph. So join us as we share powerful stories that transcend adversity, reminding you that resilience is a force within us all. So be prepared, everyone, to be inspired and find the strength to navigate life's challenges. I am your host. My name is Dr. Rani Thanacoody. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, Mars Venus life and relationship coach, breathwork coach, astrologer, tarot reader, past life regression practitioner, chakra practitioner, and life force compassion practitioner. And today, I have the great pleasure to introduce you to a very special guest. His name is Daryl Dittmer. Daryl is an author of the book When I Stopped Fighting, The Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass. Warm welcome, Daryl, to Amazing You.
Thank you, Rani. Thank you, Dr. Rani. I really appreciate you having me on today. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And Daryl, my first question to you, I would appreciate if you can share with the audience a bit more about your story.
Sure. I grew up in the Midwest, and the place I grew up matters because in the Midwest, there was this thing called Protestant work ethic. Oh. And that's what I grew up with. I had a dad who was a mechanic. My mom took care of the household and us kids. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And I love saying that because I'm a middle child. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think it means something.
It does.
So a fairly, not terribly, exciting one way or the other in terms of my upbringing. I was taught to work hard. I was taught to have manners. I was taught to, do all the things that were expected of me to be done. Mm-hmm. And that may be a good thing. And that may, certainly I know it affected me and my life because, there was always something in me that was driven to try to have people like me and agree with me and accept me and all of those kinds of things. And I got to the point when I was 13 years old, and I'll not go too deep into, some of the instances and whatever, but I got involved in drinking and drugs. Okay. And I became, there's a line, I think, from an addiction perspective where we're experimenting and then we're getting to rely on it and then we're addicted to it. And I got to a point where it affected my life. It affected everything that I did. It turned me into a person who would not think twice about lying or cheating or stealing to support the things that I was doing. And I became a miserable person. I knew that I wasn't the person that I was raised to be. I was not the person that I was, quote unquote, expected to be. And that's not just from the outside world. That was from myself. And there was something that in me that knew that. And I knew I was going down a very destructive, very dangerous road. But I didn't necessarily attribute it to the drinking or the drugs. And and the progression of the disease worsened, and it became it just I became almost unable to have relationships. I couldn't look people in the eye. I didn't know what was real versus what wasn't real from the perspective of just life, and it was downhill fairly quickly for me to the point where when I turned, well, actually, right before I turned 19, there was an intervention that was done, with my parents, and I found myself faced with a decision. Either I go and talk to a drug and alcohol treatment counselor, or I'm pretty much out of the life of my family and my parents. So it was the scariest moment of my life to that point, and just because of how it hit me emotionally, being so hidden and needing to be so hidden, and feeling like my dysfunction and my everything that was wrong with me was being discovered, and was being uncovered. And so I made the decision that I wanted to go see the drug counselor, and not necessarily to get better, more to appease those who were quote unquote after me.
Okay.
And my plan was to lie. My plan was to be dishonest. And I decided that that's what I was going to do. And I walked in, and this drug counselor, he was probably 45 years old. He said, "You know what? Don't even try it. Don't lie to me. Don't try to BS me. Don't tell me things that aren't true.
Yes.
Because I'll know. I'll know." And he intimidated me. I was a young kid. I had just turned 19 at that point. Or actually, no, when I saw him, I was still 18. So I was a kid, and he intimidated me. And so I told him the truth to the best of my ability. And, to whatever degree that was, and I don't actually remember the conversation, but I remember that about it, that I told him the truth to the best of my ability. And at the end of the discussion, I said, "What do you think, Doc?" And he said, "Well, you need to go to an inpatient drug treatment program." And so January 3rd of 1985 is when I entered, and that was just after I turned 19. I entered a drug and alcohol treatment program, inpatient, for 30 days. And I'll sort of stop it there, because that lays the groundwork for the rest of my life. But I've been drug and alcohol free ever since, and really focused on trying to be a better me and a better participant in this universe, so that I can help other people. And that's been my intent in life for a long time now.
Wow, that's incredible. Where you were and how far you've come, to being
Thank you.
drug, alcohol free, and to be doing the great things that you are doing. Yes, what a journey. And what was it that you were, because there are so many people who are experiencing this kind of issue, right now as we are talking, into deep alcohol, into drugs and alcohol, and trying to suppress their pain, their childhood issues. What would you like to share to those people to help them today?
I truly believe that no matter where we are in life, wherever that may be, we can always change, and we can always better ourselves, and we can always move forward, and we can always find our way out. I was fortunate to have some mentors that I was introduced to. When I got out of treatment, there were two things that I got out of that experience. One was hope that I could have a better life and that I wouldn't have to be miserable. And two was I got the 12-step program. I was introduced to the 12 steps, and that was life-changing for me. And so I found mentors through those things. And if there's a way that you can find a mentor, if you're struggling, somebody that can can kind of shine a light and lead the way a little bit, I think that's incredibly helpful, especially as we're trying to find our way and there are things we don't understand and things that can be explained to us. And it helps the journey to make sense.
That is so true. Having mentors to guide us, it really helps us to see ourselves in a different light, and having somebody to support us without judging us, but just being there and guiding us, it's life-changing. Yeah. And you've got that beautiful book that you showed me, that you've written, which, yes, thank you for sharing that, which is called When I Stop Fighting and the Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass. So tell us more about what inspired you, Daryl, to write that book, and tell us more about that book, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rani. It's been a long time coming to write this book. And I truly believe that things happen in the time that they're supposed to happen. I do believe that. So I probably couldn't have written it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, like I wrote it 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So I don't lament anything in terms of the timing and how that all worked out, but probably
Yes.
20 years ago, my wife, I was relating some stories to her of my youth and some of the things that I did and some of the trouble that I got into. And she looked at me and I had been probably 20 years free of drugs and alcohol at that time. And she looked at me and she said, "You're not that person anymore." And she said, "I just don't see it. I don't see that person there." And I said, "Well, remind me to write a book someday." So that was sort of how it started and how that discussion started. And I probably wrote over the next 18 and a half years, I probably wrote about 3 paragraphs.
Okay.
And then I decided actually in 2023, early 23, that I was going to sit down and I was going to get a book written. And it took me about 3 months to write this book. And I also wrote another book within the first 6 months. So
Okay.
I've written 2. I've only published 1. The other one's going to publish pretty soon. But
That's
that
great.
was how it happened once I chose to just do the work. And I'll just say one more thing about the title of the book. And we were
Yes.
speaking about mentors a little earlier, that one of my mentors and the greatest mentor in my life outside of my dad, who was a mentor in some ways, and then my other mentor was a mentor for me in different ways. But he said to me as I was struggling through and I grew up with suck it up and, keep going through the pain and rub some dirt on it. You'll be fine. If there's not a bone sticking out, you're not hurt, that kind of thing. And that was how I grew up. And so I was fighting everything. I would fight everything. And I mean that literally and figuratively, but just the fight within myself. And my mentor, Bud, said to me, he said, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops." And that's why I titled my book in that way, When I Stopped Fighting. But that was a turning point in my life. And it was Bud saying that to me that just got the wheels turning a little bit and just started getting me to think differently about how I approach things. And that was I was 19 years old then. I was probably 8 or 9 months drug and alcohol free, and so that wheel has been turning ever since. And it turned into a book about a year and a half ago.
That is incredible. That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Daryl, for sharing that. You
Thank you.
talk about fighting. Can you tell us more about that? Because we are always fighting with ourselves, whether we like it or not. Tell us more about that, please, Daryl.
Sure. No, we are, and I can fight. I'm a competitive person, which to me is a form of a fight. I love to tackle difficult things, which I think is, can be that way as well. But there's really subtle little things in us and in me and the things that I've found, such as when I first started getting free of drugs and alcohol, and I started trying to live in a different way, and 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 it was really easy to be very, very hard on myself for not thinking the right things or feeling things that I didn't think I should be feeling. And then I would beat myself up for those things. So the subtleties sometimes are interesting when we find ourselves, and when I found myself, and I call it the ass kicking machine. I would turn on the ass kicking machine. I'd kick my own butt, and I would do it because of things that I had a choice of. Either I could sort of feel them and let them go through me, or I could stop them and fight them. And what I had done, for so long, is stop them and fight them, as opposed to let them go through me. And so those are the fights. There's so many ways that we can fight, but those are some ones that and even more subtle than that is, and I'll just say this because I meditate now, and that's something I've done for quite some time. And
Yes.
sometimes when I'm meditating and a thought comes through, and I'll instead of just letting it pass like a cloud, you're not supposed to, what's going on. And those are just those little subtle fights where we you know can chastise ourselves or not be good to ourselves in those times where we need to be good to
Yes.
ourselves. So I hope that helps in terms of my definition of those fights.
Yes, I think that's very helpful because we always think of physical fight, but there is a bigger fight going on inside of us. It's those inner battles between our heart and our mind. You know, we have all these thoughts always going on that we can't stop, 60,000 thoughts per day. So it's about always that subtle fight that you are talking about, which is even more important to be able to, in a way, to tame that a bit, to calm that down a bit, so that make us think more, do more things in a more calmer way, more from a heart-centered way. Yeah, and there is a beautiful story that somebody shared with me, and it was a grandfather talking to his grandchild. He said, inside of us, there's two lions. There's the good lion, who is kind, calm, loving, and generous, and there is the nasty lion. And the grandfather and the child asked the grandfather, I think the grandfather asked the child, so which lion do you think will win? And then the answer came, it's the lion that you feed. You know,
Mm.
you can feed inside of you love, kindness, and compassion like you are doing now. Or we can decide to feed all these resentment, this anger, the pain, and the being hard on ourselves. We can feed that. So it is a choice that we have in life. Like how you transform your life, it's a choice that you made on that day, that you are doing to do things differently from now on. You are choosing to do that. Yeah. And that is very empowering. That is very powerful. Yeah.
But Bud had said to me another thing that he said that was incredibly important, and
Yes.
which he said, Daryl, first things first, and the rest shall be added on.
Yeah.
And what he meant by that, which took me a while, and that's why we need mentors. And that's why mentors were so helpful to me, because I didn't know exactly what he was talking about. First things first. And then he explained it. And as I continued to move through life and look at things in a different way, it was, I have to think about what's going on inside me and how life is resonating with me, and whatever my search is for a universal power or intelligence, and how that resonates with me internally, and feeding that fire before I feed everything outside of me. If I can get this in a good spot, then my life becomes in a good spot. So first things first, and the rest shall be added on. If I get this taken care of, and continue to work on this as my first priority, which is what I do, so many years later, it's even probably more so my priority, because I know how important it is. And then the rest of life is truly not that difficult, and it doesn't mean difficult things don't happen. It doesn't mean there's not pain, but
Yes.
but life is much more manageable, and I'm much more able to allow life to happen, as opposed to, grabbing it by the throat and saying, I'm just going to, make this stuff happen. And that can also be part of the fight, not allowing life to unfold.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Daryl. I've got a very interesting question for you. And I think that will help the audience. What kind of routine do you, like self-care routine, do you have for yourself to keep yourself in such a zen state? I love your calm energy. So what is it that you can share with the audience? How do you work on yourself each day?
Thank you. No, I do think that's an incredibly important question, and incredibly important to understand how we all approach our lives, and there are pillars that I think are incredibly important, and I look at life as I'm working with my mind, my body, my heart, and my soul, and I have to pay attention to all of those things. So how I treat my body is very important. What I eat, what I put in my body, when I eat. I do intermittent fasting, so I give my digestive system a break, that sort of thing. That's one thing that's been very important for me and helpful for me, except when I go on vacation and then I cheat and eat the things I shouldn't. But that's okay, because I allow myself to do that instead of beat myself up for it. So that's very important. That's, treating my body. I exercise at least 5 or 6 days a week, which is non-negotiable, just something that I have to do. And then for my heart and my soul, I meditate in the morning. And before my meditation, I do a breathing practice, pranayama. One of my dear friends is a pranayama teacher and practitioner, and he's just the most wonderful, loving, beautiful human I feel like I've ever met. And so he taught me this practice, and I do it before my meditation, which opens me up and calms me and quiets me, so that my meditation is that much more effective. And then I practice gratitude. I don't spend much time at all thinking about what I want, but I do spend time feeling gratitude for what I've been given, and the blessings, and the wonderful things, and the wonderful people in my life. And those are really the foundations for what I do on a daily basis. And once I do those things, the rest of life is not difficult, because I've set that foundation on a daily basis.
Yes, thank you so much, because I think it's a very important way to start our day, to have a routine, to have a practice, and we take care of ourselves first. We nourish ourselves, our body, our mind. We need to nourish every part of that human being that we are. And I like that you talk about intermittent fasting and breathing. Can you tell us a bit more what you have noticed, how important has been intermittent fasting in your life, and what has been some of the benefits you've experienced for yourself?
Sure. I have previously I had been diagnosed with an intestinal disorder, ulcerative colitis,
Okay.
which is not a good one in terms of just health, and it had to do, excuse me, it had to do with my, I think how I was going about life. I was going about life very hard and being very motivated, and that's all part of my story. Learning how to live. And I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis because I think it had to do with some of the things I was eating and when I was eating them and the stress that was in my life. So I adopted intermittent fasting, and I have been asymptomatic for the most part. There was a little time there when I sort of fell off and wasn't doing the things that I was normally doing, but almost 12 years that it's been asymptomatic for 95% of that time. And quite honestly, also, you hear a lot of doctors talk about inflammation and, excess
Yes.
visceral fat and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And intermittent fasting, I do 20 hours a day of fasting, a 4-hour eating window,
Okay.
and either 5 or 6 days a week. I think, it's very important to give ourselves a break from everything that we do.
Yes.
Um, and that's I almost have, zero inflammation, and the fat on my body is almost gone. So, and not that I just think that's something that can be healthy for us if we're allowing those things to be at a level where they're supposed to be, where we're most healthy.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's like
Thank you.
I felt I needed to ask you that question about intermittent fasting.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you share that part of that issue that you've experienced, that medical condition, that you've been able to heal your body with intermittent fasting. And you said
Mm.
also along that you changed some of the food that you were eating. What are the food? I am interested to know what are the food that you were avoiding to help your body to heal. Could you please share that with us?
Sure. I do almost zero sugar in terms of processed sugar. Now, there's certainly in fruits and some vegetables, and on the weekends I allow myself to put a little honey in my tea. So
Okay.
those are sugars that I have, but processed sugar almost zero.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think too much about gluten because I don't know that that's necessarily a real trigger for me, but I also very much limit. I unless my wife go out to a nice dinner, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, that's about all I'll have bread. So I just sort of stay away from that. Soy I stay away from for the
Mhm.
most part,
Yeah.
and dairy I stay away from for the most part. So those are really four that I try to stay away from, and I've learned to up my good fats like avocado and
Okay.
MCT oil and good olive oil. Um, all those things are I think important because that's the fuel that our cells run on. Is those kinds of good fats. So there's a few things that I have discarded, but also things that I've added in that seem to make a big difference.
Thank you, Daryl, for sharing all this valuable information, because it's not only about doing the inner work, but it's about what we put in our body, the food that we eat, and that has a huge impact on our energy level, on our well-being. And it's a whole body, mind, and spirit in order to have greater well-being. It's all work together. It's not only one thing that we do. And also you mentioned about doing breathing, because I've been doing all that you are doing, and I know the benefits. It's amazing. For me, I used to have stomach pain, and I know when I have stomach pain, I'm not breathing properly. And as soon as I start to go back to my breathing, it's gone. It goes away. So breathing is super, super powerful. Can you share with the audience what are some of the benefits of doing pranayama or any kind of breathing technique, please?
Sure. What I have found, and one of the most profound things, because I've meditated for a long time, and the quiet that is achieved after doing that meditation practice, it to me, it almost became like the quietness was so quiet that I could hear it. It was almost loud. It set the table for a practice where if I were to start here from a noise perspective, I was way down here, and it just everything quieted right down. But I've noticed, and all of these things reverberate. So I'm a believer that to do these things will reverberate through the rest of my life and through the rest of my day and through all of my interactions and experiences. And that's another thing that the breathing has done is it takes down my level of maybe I do believe I observe more than I react, or I watch more than I sometimes participate, because it's brought down that need to jump in, and that need to change, and that need to revise, and not to say that I don't do things. I do a ton of stuff every single day, but it brings down the level of how I approach life. And if that makes sense, I know it sounds a little odd, but if you breathe and you do those practices, sort of that as well. And I don't know that this has necessarily been, medically, I think it has to do with my diet and with the breathing and the meditation and everything else. But I'm 58 years old. I'm not on prescriptions. My blood pressure is fine. I don't have issues that are currently outstanding, other than I've got a few body things just from all the craziness in my younger days. I've had a few things that have needed to be fixed, but other than mechanical things, internally, my body is doing great. And that's also, I think, a benefit of certainly the breathing, but all the other practices as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Daryl, for sharing all that, because it is a combination of what we eat, the meditation, the breathing, the intermittent fasting. All this helps in maintaining and in keeping our body fit. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Of course.
And would you please share with us who has been the most influential person in your life and why?
Well, I am going to have to say, and there have been many influential people in my life, but I will go with in my younger years when I met my mentor, Bud, and imagining going into a drug and alcohol treatment program. Just turned 19. I'm freaking out. I don't know anything about anything. I don't know anything about life. I at 18 and 19 years old, we're struggling to figure out life, not just figure out how to be free from drugs and alcohol and how to be happy and all those kinds of things. It was a perfect storm of dysfunction for me at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And I met Bud, and my first impression was when I looked in his eyes and I could see the calm and I could see the serenity and I could see the peace, and I could see his ability and willingness to help other people like me. And that was one of the most cool things that I've ever experienced in my life, because I didn't know that's what people did. I didn't know, for me growing up, it was all about, being tough and hard work and wrestling through and all that kind of thing. And I was shown that there's a different way to go about living our lives. And Bud is the one that introduced me to that. And I've had to, take the mantle for the rest of my life. But while I was with Bud, and Bud helped to shape me and help me to understand. And he gave me a book, actually, and I was less than a year sober. And the book was called The 10 Commandments, and it's by Emmett Fox. And Emmett Fox has some really wonderful teachings, and some people might say, "Oh, 10 Commandments, the Bible and that sort of thing." But it's okay. It's not.
Okay.
It's a spiritual book, and it's about how we can look at things like the Bible and like some of the other things that we see in life, and look at them in many different ways and from many different perspectives, and that people's perceptions, and this was helpful for me to understand at that age, that people's perceptions are at different, abilities to understand things at different times. And at that time, I didn't have much of an ability to understand certain things, and I still feel like I'm in spiritual kindergarten, and I will be for the rest of my life. But that it's okay to allow ourselves to grow and to move forward, and it doesn't all have to happen in one day. It can, the journey is the important part, not what we're trying to get to. If anything, actually, we learn that, and I learned that the journey is the most important part. And those are some of the things that Bud brought into my life, and shaped me into who I am and what I'm about today, based on what he was teaching me so many years ago.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so important to have mentors, people that who can help us on our journey, because we are, sorry, we are not meant to go alone. We are meant to be in relationship with others and to learn and grow, from each other. And having mentors, I know the benefits. It has been life-changing in my life. And I'm really glad that I'm sure you had various mentors. They have helped you at different stages of your life. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. There was a quick story I'll tell, if that's okay.
Yes, Daryl,
It
please.
was a gentleman he wasn't necessarily a mentor of mine personally, but he was, how he conducted himself was life changing for me. And the reason that I remember this story 40 years later, but almost 40 years later. So, as I mentioned, I was involved in 12-step programs, and there was one night, and I was probably early 20s, maybe at the most. And I was at a Friday night meeting at the community center, which was one that we always would go to. And it was me and a lot of my younger friends who were also trying to rid themselves and clean up and get rid of the drugs and alcohol from their lives. They went to this meeting with me, and there was a gentleman at this meeting, and it was a big meeting. It was, some meetings would have 10 people, but this meeting probably had 100 or 150 people at any given time.
Okay.
And there was a gentleman named Jimmy, and he was an older guy. He was probably 75 or so, and he walked a little hunched over, and he was pretty slow, but he had been sober at that time, free from drugs and alcohol, for 40 years. And us young people looked at him like he was just like a deity. It was wonderful to see that, but it was almost surreal. We couldn't get our heads around that at that point. And Jimmy he was pretty quiet. He didn't say a whole lot, but he was the only person that would walk around with the coffee pot at those meetings and fill people's coffee. He would get up, grab the coffee pot, fill it up, and go around and fill up people's coffee. And it was just such a beautiful thing to see, because a person who had been sober that long, who probably didn't need to do that, who could have left it for people who, like me, who were, sober for a short period of time, go fill those people's coffee. He would do that. And the humility that he showed, and the reverence that he showed for everybody there, was just such a beautiful thing. It was just such a selfless thing for me to watch happen. And Jimmy used to say, and this is one of the things I've carried with me since that time, he used to say, if you want to be successful in life within yourself and move yourself forward, you have to remember to stay small. And stay small was something he always said. And to me, that means humility. To me, that means another way to express humility, which is teachability. I need to continue to be open to learning, and continue to be open to what everybody and everything can teach me. And that was just a wonderful, wonderful experience for me to witness and to hear from Jimmy. I'll forever be grateful.
That is really, I'm really glad you shared that story, because you made a great point about not only being humble, but being open to learn, because it's not only learning for a certain period of time. It's not only when we go to school or to university, but to be open to this life journey, because we are always learning new things, new experiences. It can be good or bad, but we are always on that journey of growth. And if we are open to it, a lot of great things can happen. It's like a huge transformation within us, But if we are resistant, if we are fighting against the learning, we are resistant to the learning, that's when we stay stuck in our lives. Yeah. So I think that's a very important point that you made, that continuous learning that we have to keep on doing throughout our life. Because the day we stop learning, that's when we start dying. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And that's one of the fights that is talked about in my book, which is, just being open and not being resistant, like you just mentioned, not being resistant to learning new things. And I think, if I grab life too hard and I try to direct it how I think it should go, I miss an entire universe of things that could happen had I been open to them. And I truly believe that it's an amazing universe when we allow it to unfold, and it's restricting if we restrict it.
Yes. And it can be a simple thing. It's like somebody just cancel an appointment. We don't need to get angry or upset. We just allow it, Allow it, because, and then you notice something better happen. And this has happened so many times to me. But if I was angry and resistant and upset, it's like I would not have been in that space to attract another meeting with another person. So it's like in the little things that we do, it's being open to learning in the little.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a great thing that we go to university, that's where we are learning. No, it's the day-to-day life. Yeah.
Could not agree more.
Thank you. Daryl, it's been amazing talking to you. And my last question to you You're welcome. Is beside writing your new book, what other projects or initiatives are you currently working on, and how can people stay updated and get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you. I'm I haven't started book 3 yet.
Okay.
I'm just getting ready to launch book 2, so a lot of my time is taken up with book 2. I did my first book in an audio book that I did myself, and I still have to do that on book 2. So that's another project that I'm currently working on. Book 3, I'm guessing I'll probably start to write that early in 2025, once I get through the holidays and get the second book launched. But I've also been doing a podcast recently, which is brand new territory for me, but I love it, and I love being able to talk to wonderful and interesting people. So I've done the podcast, and I've done a lot of podcast guesting. So those are the projects that I'm currently working on. I write a blog, which is on my website, and all of these things, the podcast, the book, and the second book, and the audio book are all on my website. Second book won't be available till October 15th, but you can get a little bit of a preview for it, and actually sign up for a preview. If you give us your email address, we'll send you a preview of book 2. So my website is Daryl Dittmer, which is DarylDittmer.com. And that's the best place to find me, and social media links are on there, and everything else is on there in terms of book, podcast, etc.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that, Daryl. I wish you the very best with your podcast, with the 2 books, the launch of your second book, writing of your third book. Wow, how exciting this is. And thank you for gifting the audience and of the preview of your book, that they can go on your website and have a peer review of your book, and I think put their email, you said, then they will get the preview. Yeah.
Mm.
And I wish you a lot of success in everything that you do. It's been really, really a pleasure talking to somebody like you, to a great person like you. And it's been really eye-opening being able to share those things that we have in common about the intermittent fasting, the breathing. And I really enjoy that, how important it is in our life. We don't realize how these little things have a huge impact on our well-being.
Mm.
And I would like to say big thank you to Shannon for having connected us to each other. So thank you, Shannon. You are amazing. We love you. And thank you to you, Daryl, for taking your time to speak to the audience today.
Thank you, Dr. Rani. It's been amazing speaking with you as well, and I so much appreciate you and your energy and what you. I can just feel that there's so many wonderful things and the great questions, and I really appreciate that. I'm sure we'll continue to be in touch.
Definitely. And is there any last word you would like to share with the audience?
I always like to try to just talk about the fact that no matter where you are, and no matter what you may be feeling or thinking or struggling with, there's absolutely 100% no doubt in my mind a way to get beyond it, a way to transcend it, a way to have a life literally beyond your wildest dreams. And you've said it a couple times, Dr. Rani, that it doesn't have to be these big things. It can be one of the things that became most important to me after, I went into business and I did a lot of things entrepreneurially, and there was stress involved with that, and it was crazy. And then at some point I decided that, my definition of success is as simple as waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. And what does it take to achieve that? And it's all the things that we've talked about. And that's what's been most important to me for a long time. So So a beautiful life is how we feel about ourselves and our lives on a daily basis, and that's the most treasure that anyone can possibly have.
Thank you for sharing that, because we have the choice and it is in our power to choose that, how we want to feel each morning. We can decide to feel, no, we are not well, or we are feeling excited about life. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Daryl. It's been
Thank you.
really a huge pleasure having you, talking to you, and I really look forward to connecting with you down the line, catching up again. I wish you a great summer, and thank you to the audience for watching, sharing, and subscribing. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Rani.